You know that moment when you realize you've been holding on to something for way too long? A job, a relationship, an expectation, something that deep down you know isn't serving you, but you keep clinging to it like a life raft? I had one of those moments a few years ago. I was drowning in work, trying to be everything to everyone, saying yes when I wanted to say no, chasing perfection like it was an Olympic sport. And then one day my daughter looked up at me and said, "Mom, you're really fun when you're not working." Oof, right? It hit me like a truck, because here's the raw truth. Sometimes quitting is the bravest thing we can do. We talk a lot about pushing through, hustling harder, never giving up. But what if the real courage is knowing when to walk away? So today we're not talking about quitting in the way the world defines it, as failure, as weakness. We're talking about quitting the things that are quietly stealing our joy, our energy, and our authenticity. Because if we don't, they'll keep us stuck in lives that look good on the outside, but feel exhausting on the inside. Let's dive into the 8 things you should quit today. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to choose something better. Quit trying to be perfect. Perfectionism isn't about striving for excellence. It's about trying to avoid judgment, shame, and failure. We think if I can just get everything right, no one can criticize me. If I'm perfect, I won't disappoint anyone. If I never mess up, I'll finally feel like I'm enough. But that's not how it works. Perfectionism isn't a path to self-worth. It's a straight shot to anxiety, procrastination, and burnout. I spent years wrestling with perfectionism, and here's what I know. It doesn't make you better. It makes you terrified of showing up as you actually are. It keeps you playing small, constantly scanning for where you might fall short, where someone might see the cracks. And what's worse, it convinces you that if you could just do more, be more, achieve more, then you'd finally feel at peace. But peace isn't found in perfection. It's found in knowing that who you are right now, flaws, messiness, screw-ups and all, is already enough. There's a study that shows perfectionists are more likely to struggle with depression, anxiety, and feelings of inadequacy, not because they aren't capable, but because they set a bar so high that no one could ever reach it. And when they inevitably fall short, they don't blame the impossible standard, they blame themselves. But here's the truth. The people who live the fullest, most wholehearted lives aren't the ones who get everything right. They're the ones who are brave enough to get things wrong and keep going anyway. They're the ones who stop waiting to be perfect and start choosing to be real, because real is where the magic happens. Quit saying yes when you mean no. Every time we say yes out of guilt, obligation, or fear of disappointing someone, we chip away at our own integrity. And not integrity in the moral sense, but in the wholeness sense. The part of us that knows who we are, what we need, and what we stand for. I used to think that saying yes meant I was being kind, helpful, easy to work with. But what I was really doing was betraying myself in 100 tiny ways. I'd agree to things I didn't have the time or energy for, smile through commitments I secretly resented, and convince myself that being exhausted was just the price of being a good person. But the truth is, every yes that isn't honest is just a slow leak in our sense of self. Research shows that people who struggle with boundaries experience higher levels of stress, resentment, and emotional exhaustion. And here's the kicker. The people who do respect their own limits, they don't lose relationships, they strengthen them. Because real connection doesn't come from pleasing people, it comes from showing up as our whole, honest selves. Saying no isn't rejection, it's self-respect. It's trusting that the people who truly love you don't need you to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. It's choosing to value your time, energy, and well-being as much as you value everyone else's. And yes, it's uncomfortable at first. There's a pause, a hesitation, that moment where you brace for someone's disappointment. But on the other side of that discomfort is something powerful. The deep, undeniable relief of finally being true to yourself. Quit waiting for confidence before you start. We have this idea that confidence is the prerequisite for bravery, that we have to feel ready before we take the leap. But that's not how it works. Confidence isn't what gets us to the starting line, courage is. And courage, by definition, means showing up even when we're uncertain, even when we're afraid, even when our hands are shaking and our voices tremble. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at someone doing something bold, launching new business, speaking in front of a huge audience, putting their art into the world, and thought, wow, they must be so confident. But when I ask them about it, the answer is almost always the same. I was terrified, but I did it anyway. Because confidence isn't something we're given, it's something we build brick by brick every time we do the thing we thought we couldn't do. There's a study that found people who take action despite their fears actually develop confidence over time. Not because the fear goes away, but because they prove to themselves over and over again that they can survive it. That's the difference between waiting for confidence and choosing courage. One keeps us stuck, always waiting for the right moment. The other pushes us forward, even when we feel like we have no idea what we're doing. So if you're standing at the edge of something new, wondering if you have what it takes, let me save you some time. You won't feel ready, and that's okay. Do it anyway. Confidence will catch up. Quit believing you're too much or not enough. These are two sides of the same coin, and somehow we manage to believe both at the same time. One minute, we feel like we're taking up too much space, too loud, too emotional, too ambitious. The next, we feel like we're falling short, too quiet, too awkward, too inexperienced. And we carry this exhausting, contradictory belief that if we could just get it right, just strike the perfect balance, then we'd finally be worthy of love, belonging, success. I remember sitting in a room full of brilliant people, thinking any second now they're going to figure out I don't belong here. That's the voice of shame, and shame is tricky because it doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Tone it down. Don't draw too much attention. Play it safe. Other times it hisses. Who do you think you are? Either way, the message is the same. You're not okay as you are. But here's what I know. The most wholehearted, grounded people I've met aren't the ones who finally figured out how to be just right for everyone else. They're the ones who've stopped trying. They're the ones who've decided that their job isn't to shrink or stretch themselves to fit someone else's version of acceptable. Their job is to show up fully and unapologetically as themselves. Because the truth is, you will be too much for some people, and you will not be enough for others. But the people who are meant to be in your life, they don't need you to be anything other than exactly who you are. Quit numbing the hard stuff. We all have something we reach for when life feels overwhelming. Scrolling mindlessly, pouring another glass of wine, overworking, online shopping, zoning out in front of Netflix. It's not about what we're doing, it's about why we're doing it. When discomfort creeps in, stress, loneliness, self-doubt, we instinctively look for an escape hatch, and for a moment, it works. The noise gets quieter, the edges soften. But here's the hard truth. We can't selectively numb. When we numb pain, we also numb joy. When we dull our fear, we also dull our ability to feel deep connection and love. There's research that shows chronic numbing, whether it's with substances, social media, or even just staying so busy that we don't have to feel, actually increases anxiety and depression over time. Because the feelings we avoid don't disappear, they just wait. And they get louder. I used to think I was just pushing through the hard stuff, that keeping busy and powering through was a sign of strength. But what I was really doing was avoiding. And avoidance doesn't heal. It delays, it compounds, and eventually it catches up with us in ways we never expected. Burnout, resentment, feeling disconnected from the people we love most. The real work, the work that leads to actual healing, is learning to sit with discomfort without running from it. To let the hard emotions rise, to feel them, to acknowledge them, and then to choose what comes next with intention rather than reaction. That's how we build resilience. That's how we make space for the joy, love, and meaning we're actually craving. Because a life spent numbing isn't really living, it's just not feeling. and you deserve more than that. Quit trying to control things that were never yours to carry. Most of us walk through life with this unspoken belief that if we try hard enough, plan well enough, or worry just the right amount, we can prevent bad things from happening. We micromanage situations, replay conversations in our heads, obsess over how we're perceived, all in an attempt to feel safe. But the truth is, control is an illusion, and spending our energy trying to grip things that were never ours to hold doesn't bring us peace. It brings us exhaustion. I used to believe that if I could just keep everything in check, my work, my relationships, my emotions, then nothing could fall apart. But that's not how life works. Life is messy, unpredictable, full of things we can't script. And the more we resist that truth, the more anxious, frustrated, and depleted we become. There's a study that shows people who struggle with control, whether it's perfectionism, overthinking, or people-pleasing, actually experience more stress, not less. Why? Because they're constantly wrestling with a reality they can't change. The irony is, the moment we stop gripping so tightly, the moment we surrender the need to control every outcome, we actually gain something far more powerful: freedom. So if you find yourself constantly bracing, constantly managing, constantly trying to keep every plate spinning, pause. Ask yourself, is this mine to carry? If it's not, set it down. Because peace isn't found in controlling everything. It's found in trusting yourself to handle whatever comes, even when you can't predict what that will be. Quit shaming yourself for resting. Somewhere along the way, we started treating exhaustion like a status symbol. We wear our busyness like a badge of honor. Proof that we're hardworking, dedicated, worthy. We tell ourselves, I'll rest when everything is done, but everything is never done. The to-do list regenerates like some kind of never-ending monster, and we just keep pushing, convinced that slowing down means falling behind. I used to believe that rest was something you earned. That if I just worked hard enough, proved myself enough, I'd eventually get to a place where I deserved a break. But the problem with tying our worth to productivity is that there's always more to do. Always another task, another expectation, another reason to put ourselves last. And before we know it, we're running on empty, snapping at the people we love, wondering why we feel so disconnected from our own lives. There's research that shows chronic stress and lack of rest don't just impact our mental health, they actually impair our ability to think clearly, to be creative, to show up fully in our relationships. Rest isn't a reward for finishing everything. It's fuel for being everything, present, engaged, alive. So if you've been waiting for permission to rest, here it is. You don't have to burn out to be valuable. You don't have to run yourself into the ground to be worthy. Rest isn't indulgent, it's necessary. And the world doesn't need a more exhausted, depleted version of you. It needs you, whole, rested, fully here. Quit waiting for the perfect moment. How many times have you told yourself, I'll do it when I'm ready? Or I'll start when things calm down, when I have more time, when I feel more confident? We convince ourselves that there's a perfect moment out there, some magical, pressure-free time when fear won't be a factor, when all the signs will line up and we'll finally have permission to go after what we really want. But here's the truth. That moment doesn't exist. And the longer we wait for it, the more life passes us by. I've met so many people who are sitting on dreams, on ideas, on things they know they're meant to do, but they're stuck in the waiting room of life. Waiting for certainty, for guarantees, for the promise that they won't fail. But growth doesn't happen in waiting, it happens in doing. And the people who actually create meaningful lives aren't the ones who had the perfect timing. They're the ones who started before they were ready. Research shows that when we procrastinate on big, meaningful goals, it's usually not about laziness, it's about fear. Fear of failure, fear of what others will think, fear of stepping into the unknown. But waiting doesn't make the fear smaller, it just makes the regret bigger. So whatever it is you've been putting off, starting that business, writing that book, having that hard conversation, stop waiting for the perfect moment. It's not coming, but you are. And that's enough. At the end of the day, quitting isn't always about giving up. Sometimes it's about letting go. Letting go of the things that weigh us down, the beliefs that keep us small, the habits that quietly steal our joy. It's about making space for courage, for connection, for the life we actually want to live. Because here's what I know, the people who live the fullest, bravest lives aren't the ones who never struggle. They're the ones who refuse to stay stuck. The ones who choose again and again to release what no longer serves them so they can step fully into who they're meant to be. So if any part of this resonated with you, if you felt a little tug, a little nudge, don't ignore it, trust it. Change doesn't happen all at once, but it starts with a decision. A decision to quit the things that hold you back even when it's uncomfortable. A decision to show up even when it's scary. A decision to live in a way that feels true to you. You don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to start. Good luck. You've got this.